Believe it or not, none of my students like taking tests. I know, absolutely shocking, isn't it? But the questions and the tests that they hate the most are multiple choice exams. Why? Because they seem harder than most test types. They're harder because we sometimes feel like the professor's out to get us. We feel like we can't really show what we've learned because we don't get to show our work. And they're harder because they're just hard to think through. Whatever reason you find multiple choice tests hard, what I hope to share with you in this video segment are some ideas that will help you to feel a little bit better about multiple choice tests. Now, fair warning, the tips I'm about to share with you about a multiple choice test assume that you've done the work to both learn from the online lecture and to study for tests in general. So hopefully you're already good with those two pieces. Because assuming that you have a good, solid grasp of the basic information of the course and how to apply it and how to analyze and use that information, then what I'm about to share should help a lot as you specifically focus on multiple choice tests. One of the biggest problems with multiple choice tests is that they're stressful for students. You know, looking at those problems, that the professor has given you 3 or 4 wrong answers. And you have to figure out which one. And you don't get to show your work, and there's no partial credit, and it starts to become really stressful. And what if the professor's trying to trick me in? You stress yourself out so much that you can't do well on the test. So the first step in any multiple choice test, and perhaps any test, once you open up the file and you're ready to get started, is to take a deep breath and relax. Remember, it's just another test. You've done hundreds, if not thousands of these over your academic career, and you're going to do fine. You've put in the work, you've studied hard, now just let yourself succeed. But the first thing you have to do is give yourself that break. And if you feel yourself starting to panic later on, relax. Relax. You're probably doing better than you think you are. One of my worst experiences ever was trying to take the GMAT test. It's a test that you take if you want to go on to a master's or PhD in business. And all of the test books I'd used, all the study materials I'd used, said that the questions got harder and harder and harder as you went through the exam. And so if you were getting easy questions, then you were blowing it. And so I studied hard and I did multiple practice exams and I got in there and I started doing the test and the questions were easy. They were much easier than anything I'd seen on the practice test. And I was 100% sure that I was blowing it. And I got to the end of the test and you had a choice at the end. Do you want to take this score or cancel the score? And you didn't get to see the score first. You just had to decide on your own. And I just about canceled it because I thought with the questions this easy, I have messed up. I have totally blown this test. I'm never going to get into graduate school. And luckily, whether it was inspiration or desperation, whatever you want to call it, something told me to just give it a try, at least see how badly you did so you know how much harder to study as you move forward. So I accepted the answers, I accepted my score, I should say, and lo and behold, I had gotten a fabulous grade. And it was just my perception. I had freaked myself out and ended up doing fine. So remember, take a deep breath and relax as you first get started. Then take a deep breath and relax if you start to stress out later. You're probably doing better than you think you did. Other thing to keep in mind is that often with online testing, you have to deal with some kind of a server or proctoring system or other technological mess to get into the test. That's going to stress you out too. So give yourself 30 seconds to a minute, etc. when you first get into the test to calm down after dealing with the technology. Next, as you start getting into specific questions, focus on what the professor is really asking. I have lost track of the number of times I've had students come in to talk through a test and they've looked through the multiple choice questions on the exam and said, oh, I just didn't understand that question, or I wasn't sure what they were asking for, or I don't think I read that carefully enough. Well, why not? That should be the very first thing. I strongly recommend for you and everyone who's taking any kind of a test and doing any kind of a question, making the first step, reading through the question, and making a note to yourself. I need to do this. It may be as simple as what chapter is this from? What lecture might this be from? Is he looking for a definition? Is he looking for what's not true, is true? A list of things, part of a list of things, etc. So here's an example question, one that I actually ask my classes. And the question can be kind of hard to understand. Accounting information is considered to be relevant when it blank. So what I'm looking for as an instructor is the rest of the sentence, meaning I want to know when accounting information is relevant, which comes from chapter 2 of our textbook in our very first lecture. Okay, now I know how to approach this, and I can start going through looking for the rest of that definition. You know, this may seem like a waste of time, but if you'll give yourself 5 seconds, 10 seconds, etc., to make either a mental note or an actual physical note to yourself, we're looking for this. It will help you avoid getting lost in the different answers and answering the wrong question. Next, what do you think the answer is? It is really easy to get yourself confused if you focus just on the answers that are there. So I strongly recommend, after you've decided exactly what the question is asking for, that you answer the question yourself. Literally, cover up those answers that the professor's provided, do the calculation, jot down the answer, or whatever you need to do, so that you have your own answer to the question. Then, once you've got the answer to the question, take a look at what the professor has provided and choose the answer that matches your own. Believe it or not, it will actually improve your score because you are less likely to get caught in the quote-unquote tricky answers that have been put into the test to make sure you really know what you're doing. Last thing that we want to talk about with this. Remember, we're not out to get you. Most of us are focused on writing a fair exam that captures what you have learned. We're not trying to trick you with our answers. We're not trying to force you to do the wrong things. Most of us are not putting in little teeny tiny details that are just designed to make you second guess yourself. What we're trying to do is to help you get ready for the profession. And that means, if we're looking again at Bloom's taxonomy and the way we learn, getting you to this central level where you can analyze a situation and apply what you've learned to help improve that situation. That's what your bosses want, and that's what we want to help you do. And it's what we want you to be able to do on the tests. Now that means making the questions different from what you've seen in class. Because if I ask questions that are just like what you've seen in class, then all I'm getting is remember. That's not helpful to you or me or your future employer. I'm trying to get you up to those higher levels, which means I'm going to ask a slightly different question in a slightly different scenario than what we've talked about and use as our examples. It's intentional because that's what pushes you into higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy and shows me that you really do know what you're talking about and you really have learned. Not just that you remember a few facts and details and examples that we've done before, but that you really do know what you're doing. So yes, I am trying to push you to show me what you really know, but no, I'm not out for your blood. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not trying to keep you from getting an A. I'm just trying to make sure that you've learned. Now, obviously, I can't speak for all professors. There are some out there with what I feel are misguided goals to flunk every student or to show that you don't know as much as you think you do. That's not most of us, but there are a few out there that are like that. How do you know? Well, my favorite story of a professor like this would ask multiple choice questions that had the typical answers, A, B, C, and D, and then would go on. No, the answer is A and B, A and C, A and D, B and C, B and D, or none of the above, the correct answer is blank. If those are the questions you're getting, chances are that professor really is out to get you. But most of us are not. We just want to make sure that you've learned the material. And that means that if you use the study techniques we've already talked about, and these 4 ideas that we've talked about in this video, that you will be able to succeed in this multiple choice test. You can do it. Now, over the last 3 segments, we've talked about how to succeed in an online environment. We started out by talking about how to get the most from an online lecture. Then we talked about how to successfully study for tests. And now this time about how to improve your grade in a multiple choice test. All of those are important and useful skills when you're learning online, but they're also very useful for a traditional class. And most of the ideas that we've shared will serve you well whether you're doing online, flipped, or traditional education. Whatever style you're in, whatever your goals are, I wish you the very best as you move forward with your education. And hopefully, we'll see you again in one of my other videos. Thanks.